So, what really makes a great leader? Is it something you're born with, just part of your DNA, or is it a skill you can learn and perfect? This isn't just some dusty old debate. It's a question that really shapes everything around us, from the biggest companies to the smallest teams. For the next few minutes, we're going to dig in and try to unravel this puzzle together.
And there it is, the big question. Are they born or are they made? To even start to find an answer, we've got to take a trip back in time. We'll start way back in the early 20th century when the hunt for the perfect leader really began, and follow the breadcrumbs all the way up to today.
All right, before we can figure out where leaders come from, we have to agree on what a leader even is. So first things first, let's get a clear, simple definition on the table.
At its core, leadership isn't a job title. It's not about having the corner office. It's a process. It's the simple act of influencing a group to work together and hit a common goal. And that distinction, it's absolutely crucial, because it's all about what leaders actually do. And that idea sets the stage for our first big theory.
So the first big swing at trying to crack the leadership code was based on this idea that, well, leaders are just different, that they're born with something special. This kicked off this massive search for what you could almost call a leader gene.
Back in the 1920s and 30s, the thinking was pretty straightforward. Great leaders must all share a universal set of characteristics. So researchers studied everything: ambition, intelligence, self-confidence, hoping they could create the ultimate leadership checklist. If you ticked off the boxes, you're a leader. Simple, right?
Well, turns out, not so simple. Researchers hit a brick wall pretty quick. They found that no single list of traits could predict who'd be a successful leader in every single situation. I mean, a fantastic leader in one scenario could totally bomb in another. This whole approach was just ignoring the followers, and, even more importantly, the situation itself. It was just too one-dimensional.
So the focus had to shift. If the secret wasn't in who leaders are, then maybe, just maybe, it was in what they do. And this was a huge pivot, moving from these innate traits to things you can actually see, to behaviors.
Okay, let's make this personal for a second. I want you to think about the best leader you've ever worked for. What was it they actually did that made them so great? Did they give you really clear directions? Did they actually listen to you? Did they have your back? Just hold that thought, because your own experience is about to line up perfectly with some pretty famous research. What's so fascinating is how all these separate studies started to land on basically the same idea. The University of Iowa study, for instance, found that a democratic style made people happier. Then you had both Ohio State and the University of Michigan, and they both zeroed in on two key things. One focus on getting the job done, the task, and another focus on the people. You could start to see a real pattern emerge.
And this right here perfectly illustrates that pattern. Essentially, all that research kind of boils down to these two core behaviors. Are you focused on your people, building relationships, creating trust, taking care of their needs? Or are you focused on production, organizing the work, setting goals, and just getting it done? The best leaders, it seemed, were the ones who could do both.
But just when they thought they'd cracked it, another problem popped up. Being a high leader, high on people and high on production, it didn't always work. A leadership style that was perfect for a laid-back creative agency would be a complete disaster in an emergency room. Something was still missing from the equation.
And that missing piece was context. This was the big aha moment for researchers. They realized you just can't talk about good leadership without talking about the situation it's happening in. Context, as it turns out, is king.
This quote just nails it. You can have all the right personality traits, you can do all the right things, but if you completely misread the room, the team you have, the task you're facing, the overall environment, you're just setting yourself up to fail. This big realization gave birth to what we call the contingency theories of leadership.
So one of the first big contingency models came from a guy named Fred Fielder, and his idea was pretty radical at the time. He argued that a leader's style is basically fixed. You're either focused on the task or you're focused on the relationship. So the goal isn't to change the leader. Nope. It's to figure out the situation and then put the right leader into that specific situation. If it's a bad fit, you don't retrain the leader, you literally change the leader.
Okay, but what if a leader could change their style? What if they could be more flexible? Well, that's the whole idea behind path goal theory. It sees the leader's job as being more like a guide. Their purpose is to clear the path, remove any roadblocks, and just make sure their team has everything they need to get to the finish line. So, unlike Fiedler's fixed styles, Path-Gold theory says that the best leaders have a whole toolkit of behaviors they can pull from. Is the task confusing? Be directive and give clear guidance. Is your team totally stressed out? Be supportive. Is the group super experienced? Be participative and ask for their input. The leader adapts their style to fit what the followers and the situation need.
So this whole journey through traits and behaviors and context, it brings us right up to the modern era. How do we think about leadership now? And more importantly, what does that actually mean for you in the real world?
A huge focus today is on something called transformational leadership. This is about so much more than just managing things, rewarding people for doing their work. Transformational leaders actually inspire their followers. They elevate their team's motivation, they change the way people see challenges, and they push them to get truly extraordinary results. They literally transform them.
A really powerful real-world example of modern leadership is Mary Barra at General Motors. When she was faced with this massive crisis over faulty ignition switches, a problem, by the way, that started long before she was CEO, she didn't hide, she stepped right up, took full responsibility, and put people's safety ahead of everything else. This quote, "This is what true ethical leadership looks like in a defining moment." And what's the one thing that holds all of these modern approaches together? What makes transformational and ethical leadership even possible? It all comes down to one single word: trust. Trust is the absolute bedrock. It's the belief that your followers have in your integrity, your character, and your ability to get things done. Without trust, everything else just falls apart. So how do you actually build trust? It's not some big mystery. Research points to very clear, very specific actions. Be open with people. Be fair. Tell the truth, even when it's hard. Be consistent in how you act. Do what you say you're going to do. And keep confidences. These aren't just nice ideas, they're the practical nuts and bolts of building real trust. We've spent this whole time talking about the leader. But leadership is a two-way street, right? So after this entire journey, the answer to whether leaders are born or made seems to be, well, both. Great leaders definitely develop their skills, they learn to adapt to the context, and they have to earn the trust of their followers. But maybe the final piece of this puzzle isn't about the leader at all. Maybe the question we should really be asking is, what makes a great follower?